I'm Cameron Duncan, and I'm here with Katie Kohler from the Times-Herald, and she's also a NASDtv alumni. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
Of course. Thank you for coming to the Telethon and supporting our cause. So first, let's start off. What's your role at the Times-Herald?
I am a freelance multimedia journalist.
Okay, so what does that entail for everyone that doesn't know?
What does that entail? I work for them on a freelance basis, and I basically cover whatever they need. News, features, I write profiles. Every Sunday my column appears, which is humor, slice of life, or I'll take a chance to profile a certain member of the community that might otherwise go unrecognized. My full-time job is I'm on staff at the Spirit newspaper. It is a community newspaper based in Delaware County.
Okay.
So it is pretty much the same stuff with the Times-Herald, except on a full-time basis. Instead of Montgomery County, it's Delaware County.
Okay. Do you have anyone that you prefer? Do you like them both?
You really can't answer that. I am really lucky to be doing what I love and have a passion for.
Of course. So did you ever have any other writing jobs before Times-Herald?
I actually started with the Times-Herald in college as an intern, writing sports. I wanted to be on ESPN, and I actually practiced saying, well, then I was Katie Bambi, so I would practice in the mirror saying, Katie Bambi, ESPN, with a certain, call numbers. And that didn't happen, but I really have more of a face for newspaper, as I like to say. But I got a lot of experience writing sports. And from there, I really tried to get away from journalism because it's not exactly the most lucrative career, but it always kept calling me back. And I have been with the Herald really the last 7 years.
Wow.
And I also write for Mainline Today magazine. I am a regular contributor to their back page essay, where I'll write anything about how much I love Wegmans, to what else did I write about? I have an article coming up about the annoying kids at the public pool. And it's really a great opportunity for me, and I appreciate it.
So you really have a lot of creative freedom in your job?
Sometimes I do, but when news happens, you have to go and cover that and write it.
Okay. So you said journalism kept calling you back. What's your favorite part about journalism?
It really started here at Norristown High School. I had a great opportunity at the Wingspan with Mr. Doyle to really dive in and learn about journalism. And when you develop a passion for something at a young age, it's hard to shake that.
Yeah.
And even younger than that, I would always write stories, and I would tape them on a piece of construction paper and sell them to my parents. And I would just write like silly stories. And it was just something that I always liked to do. And the things I find when I interview people that do certain things that are the most passionate people I interview are the ones that are like, I've been doing this since I was a kid.
You can't shake your passions. So you said Mr. Doyle was your teacher. Did he have a big influence in your career choice in your life?
Absolutely.
Did you write for a newspaper in college? I know you said you wrote for the Wingspan in high school.
I did not write for a newspaper in college, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And I interned for the Herald my junior and senior year in college.
Okay. So where'd you go to college?
I went to LaSalle.
Okay. Is there any reason you didn't want to write for their newspaper?
At the time, college was a bit of a transition for me. And I really probably shouldn't be saying that as all of you are waiting to go to college and are like, this is going to be great. Yes, it is going to be great. I'm still paying for it. It's so great. Anyway, it just didn't work out that way.
Well,
yeah.
That always happens, and you got a great internship out of it anyway. So what's the hardest part of being a journalist?
It's really funny you mentioned that because last night I was in the Borough Hall of Collingdale, which is in Delaware County, for over 3 hours covering a zoning board hearing. And it was unair conditioned, And, you know, it was very, that was not the funnest part of journalism. And I had a feeling you were going to ask this question. And as I'm standing there and sweating, and the battery on my phone is dying, and there's nowhere to sit because it's standing room only, I'm like, this might be a really good answer to that question, an irrelevant one. And I find that borough council meetings, zoning board hearings, really aren't my favorite part of journalism. I call it like the purgatory of journalism, because you still get to do it, but it's not fantastic.
Not what your favorite part is at all.
And another bad part, I probably really shouldn't be saying like, oh, the bad parts of the job. You know, sometimes you get really not so nice emails. And since I read them, some people are like, don't read them, but you really can't not read them.
Yeah, you want to know what people think.
I do. I want to, and most of them, for the large part, I have to say, my readers are very nice and come over to me a lot and give me great compliments that mean the world to me. But
nice.
Sometimes hearing not so nice things, I don't write the headlines or the captions, and I don't think people realize this all the time, but hearing generally not nice things, it hurts.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to hear that about your work and yourself, but haters are motivators, as we say here at NASDtv.
I just stick with what Taylor Swift says. The hater's gonna hate.
Hate.
Yes.
So those were some of your not so favorable parts of journalism. Do you have any like really exciting experiences you had because of your job?
Absolutely. Most of it is when I leave whatever I'm covering, I'm just like, wow, that was neat. I'm really lucky to be able to have done that. And to me, being able to be a journalist is still an incredible experience for me. I'm still that kid from Norristown High that is very much just really in awe of the fact that I get to do this every day. And last week I interviewed a woman and her son in a Dunkin' Donuts, and she had wrote to the paper I work at in Delco, and she wanted us to know her son had been homeschooled and cyber schooled, and it didn't work, and he was about to give up, and he had went to Interborough High School, and now he gets straight A's. And she's like, I just want this school to know, and I want people to know that there's hope if you're struggling. And you have to fight for your kids, and I fought for my son. So sitting there and talking to her and her son in a Dunkin' Donuts and hearing their story, I love telling those stories. When people send me an email and are like, do you know about this person? I love to hear that. One of the stories I wrote was about, there's a woman on Fernand Street, she's a crossing guard, and she waves to everybody that drives by. And I always wondered, why is this woman waving to everybody? Who is she? And that's really where a lot of my stories start, is the why. And for a local community newspaper, I really think stories like that are where they hold their soul.
Yeah, I think it's good too, like in the newspaper, like for people to know things about the community. So what's your favorite story you've ever written?
I don't have children, but I imagine that'd be the same kind of question of like, pick your favorite kid.
One of your favorites.
One of my favorites? That's really a tough question. One of my favorite stories. Anything.
Or something that was the most impactful for you.
Something that was the most impactful for me. Anytime I write about my 93-year-old grandmother, it gets a really good response. And it means a lot to me to be able to write about her, because she is the type of woman where she's never had press in her life.
Yeah.
And being able to write about her, sometimes she comes and stays with me for a weekend, and I'll just write about how she likes to do my laundry and my dishes. And other people relate to this because they're like, I love my grandmom too. When she comes over, she does that. So those stories to me are my favorite to write. I also like to write about people that aren't newsmakers, that this is really the first time they're seeing their name in print. I wrote about Dolores Nave. She taught dance in Norristown for 40 years. And now she doesn't teach dance anymore because she's in her older years. And some people got in touch with me. They're like, I always wonder what happened to my old dance teacher. And when I put her name into Google, that was the only thing that came up. So those stories are really my favorite because obviously you have the politicians and the newsmakers that are having the press conferences, and I do cover that, and that is part of my job, and I'm thankful for that. But covering those type of people, the crossing guards, the mother that just wants everybody to know that even if your son might not be making it in school right now, there is hope. Those kind of things I really take pride in.
Do you think because of the fact that you write those personable stories, it makes you have a greater connection with your readers?
I hope so.
Yeah, you can only hope. I mean,
I can only hope. I mean, I think it'd be a bit presumptuous to say yes, but I hope so.
So, back to your time at Norristown, did you have any influential moments in the paper, any like memorable, funny memories or anything with your friends or Doyle that you could let our viewers know?
Sure. I came to Norristown High after 8 years of Catholic school, and it was very different coming to Norristown High School.
Yeah.
It was just a very different culture. And joining the Wingspan really set my course and gave me a sense of place. And at the time, the Wingspan was putting out a 16 to 20 page student-produced newspaper every month.
That's a lot.
And it was the place to be. We would be there after school, at study hall, and it was just, we were writing really, looking back on it now, and I still read old Wingspans because I'm a news nerd, we were writing really great stuff. And I see now I look back on it and I was like, well, this is what I could have done better. But back then, that was really good for me.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Doyle just really led the way. And I have written about him. It's very early for me. Usually writers are night owls. And this is I haven't gotten up this early really since I went to Norristown High. And I was late most of the time. You probably can't edit that out. But anyway, as I say, Norristown High School. I write about Norristown High School a lot and how much I enjoy it. I still enjoy it, and I enjoyed my time here. And people think I must have been hugely popular, and I wasn't. I played volleyball, I was on the Wingspan, I worked part-time. I wasn't hugely popular. I wasn't even scotch popular. But I really found a sense of place with the Wingspan. And I remember we would get mad when the Times-Herald would publish a story about Norristown High before us. We would feel like we got scooped. So we were a good brand of high school journalists.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So you would say like the Wingspan in Norristown influenced your career or even like your style and voice in writing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How are you currently involved in the high school?
You never want to be one of those people that like hang around the high school in like a weird way. I've always tried to be a positive voice about Norristown High School. You say the haters, they're obviously out there and what they say about Norristown High School. I try to be a positive voice and to take every opportunity I can. Even when I'm done this interview, I'm actually going to be writing about the telethon and the fact that there are still very good things happening in Norristown High School. I want people to know that. I'm also I love when people students, teachers tell me about things that are happening. I try to pitch that to the Times-Herald and write about that. Recently, I was asked to be on the committee for the Roger Grover Union and Golf outing.
Okay.
He was the longtime coach at Norristown High School, led very successful football teams, and that's actually happening tomorrow on Friday at Jeffersonville Golf Club.
So you're still very involved in everything in Norristown. What's your personal favorite part of Norristown? Or your experience at Norristown?
Personal favorite part? Obviously the wingspan of Mr. Doyle. It would have to be. Now, Norristown High School makes you earn your way. And even when you leave, they make you earn your way again.
Yeah.
And I've always respected that. Norristown High School influences me every day. What I learned here, the people I met here, and my high school experience. You know, some people are like, I want it to be idyllic, I want it to be the prom queen and this and that. I wouldn't trade it.
Yeah, it's not all about what everyone thinks it's about. So, what would you say to kids here who are aspiring to be journalists or current staff members of the Wingspan that want to try to make it big in newspaper or magazine?
Make it big.
Make it big, or at least be successful.
Make it big. First of all, take the publications class. And even if you don't want to necessarily be a journalist, but you want to go into a career where you are writing, take the publications class where you are going to actually be writing. Whatever career you want to do, whether you want to sing, dance, be an accountant, be a lawyer, be around that. Take classes that are like that and be around people that are like that. For young journalists, read and write. This is really as simple as that. And I'm lucky enough that I also get to mentor the publications program here and come in a few times a year and speak. I've also went to Upper Marion High School this year and spoke to their aspiring journalists. And I just tell them, read and write. And, you know, if they would like to reach out to me, I have a website, www.katiekohler.com, shameless plug. And I'll meet them and talk to them if they like. But it really comes down to actually writing.
So I know a lot of kids wanting to go into more creative fields get a lot of like backlash and speculation on whether they're going to be successful. But why should people really care about the news, and why is it an important field for people to be in?
First of all, I think people need to care about the news because, like I said last night at this zoning meeting, even though it was standing room only, not everybody in the community was there. Not everybody goes to school board and borough council meetings. As a matter of fact, you could kick back and lay back and take up 4 or 5 chairs if you like. You really rely on your community newspaper to tell you what is happening at these meetings. You should have a level of trust for your community newspaper to be able to report on the most basic level of what happens at these meetings. People like to say the term now is fake news, like, oh, that's fake news. I take offense to that because I'm like, as a community journalist, I am actually at the meeting. I don't sit there when I'm interviewing someone and say, how can I put a political slant on this? I just want to tell the story. I want to tell the story to the people that aren't there, and even the people that were there that are going to read it again, because I'm going to interview other people and get different perspectives. And I've never once gone into a story and said, how can I put my political slant on that? That means nothing to me. Telling the story and being fair and accurate has is always at the top of my mind.
So honesty is a big part of writing for you.
Absolutely.
Do you think it's a big part of writing in journalism? And
In general, you know, I think that most of the time, and the other journalists I've talked to, they feel the same way. They try to be fair and accurate. People like to say, well, what about the White House journalists? And what about what's happening with that? I don't have White House press credentials. I probably never will. That really isn't my goal. I'm not a political reporter. I don't write about politics. What I like to say is ask them, watch their interviews, see what they say.
so nowadays, you know, journalism isn't just in newspapers and magazines. It's a huge part of it is online. So how does that affect up and coming journalists, and is it important for them to say like diverse and multifaceted?
What I actually said at the publications program here when I visited is the difference between when I was here writing for the Wingspan and now is when you write something, it's online and everyone can read it. Literally everyone in the world can read your work. Whereas when I was writing for the Wingspan, it was just in print and whoever had access to the paper could read it. So your writing samples are available to the world. And what you write, you might think, oh, I'm turning it in and I'm going to just get graded on it. But that is somebody, you never know who's reading. And I have had different people get in touch with me because they've read something, and you need to be very aware that what you're putting online is really there forever, and it can be beneficial. You never know who's going to go to your college newspaper website, your high school newspaper website, and say, this young lady could write. Maybe I'll give her a call. Maybe I'll offer her an internship. Those are things to keep in mind.
So do you think the digital aspect you think it's an overall positive one?
The one downside to it, and I have said this and it goes back to your last question, is everything I write I put my name on. Everything I write has Katie Kohler on it. My column has my picture next to it on a very good day, I like to say. One of the ways to sniff out fake news is see if it has a byline. If there is no byline, I don't know. I would proceed with caution. If it is a weird byline, then you're like, that might not be the person's name. Maybe Truth Seeker or Mr. X really doesn't sound like a real person.
A respectable journalist.
Maybe you should look into that more. Maybe if you find yourself always reading a certain newspaper or magazine, put that person's name, whose articles you always read, into Google. See who they are, see what they write. If their name isn't coming up, maybe they're not a real person.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing to
And
consider.
these are just simple ways to sniff out fake news. And when I say that, some people are like, that's fake news too. So those are just tips. My name, when I put my name to it, that is basically me standing by it. And like your teacher says, you have to put your name on the test. It goes that way in journalism too.
Yeah. So besides the whole digital aspect, how else do you think the Wingspan has changed from when you were here to now?
It's, I think kids now have a lot more responsibility, and it might be harder to dedicate as much time. I think, but overall, I think any high school newspaper that is out there writing stories, I'm all for it, because it gives kids a chance and a forum to ask questions. And I know the administrators might not love that, but that is really the role of journalism, is to ask questions. And sometimes I don't think, not just at Norristown High School, but any high school, the newspaper team doesn't know that they could do that. that you can go to the principal, that you could go to a teacher, and you could say, hey, I'm writing a story about this. Can I ask you some questions? And I always tell them, do it in a respectable way. Don't go in there gangbusters, like if you're going to bust up some type of ring. Go in and be respectable about it, because that really is your integrity and your professionalism. And I think that is something that a high school newspaper really teaches, is interviewing skills, interpersonal skills, the ability to ask questions and get answers and put it into an article.
So do you have any tips for these students to become better writers?
To write more.
Write more.
And it's, everybody's like, but what else? Like, write more. You see baseball players are in the batting cage and they're just swinging away. Write more. And it's read a lot of different things. And it's, you might be like, but that's boring. But it's what it takes. That's what you do. If you want to sing on Broadway, you should be singing in your house all the time. You should be on every open mic stage there is. And the same is for journalism. If someone offers you an opportunity to write something and you're a young writer, write it. Write it with all the passion and enthusiasm you have.
So you're clearly a very passionate and experienced writer. Have you ever gotten any awards or recognition for your writing?
Yes, I'm very lucky that I have. And it actually started here at the Wingspan. I won a few awards through the Temple Press Tournament.
Okay.
For sports reporting and speech reporting. And that really gave me a lot of confidence to go to this prestigious tournament and to be recognized for that. At 16, 17 years old, I wasn't really a ball of confidence. I was a mess. I really was. I didn't have a flat iron. You know, I didn't have like a good makeup regimen, a good waxer. I really shouldn't be getting into that. I'm really just... It's 8:30 and it's not prime time yet.
Okay, we love the personal details here at NASDtv.
You know, I was awkward. I was really awkward.
Aren't we
On
all?
my first day of high school, this is actually pretty funny. I really shouldn't be like speaking my column before I write it. My first day of high school, I spilled ketchup all over myself. So
That's rough.
it is, and it really was set the tone for the rest of the 4 years of my just general awkwardness. But it's all right.
Well, clearly you've grown out of it.
I really haven't, because whenever I go out, I spill something on myself. No doubt I will spill something on myself.
You seem like a much more confident person. Has that come with more years of writing and experience?
It has. It comes with experience. It comes with time.
So we just have to wait it out.
It's funny because when I come to the high school now, everybody seems so confident and like they don't go through any awkward stages. And I mean, I'll tell you, I couldn't have pulled off a romper in high school. I couldn't have pulled off a romper. And I'm definitely going to ask you all that in my interviews after. Is this the new trend? And now I hear that the man romper is that the men are wearing rompers.
Yeah,
that's another thing.
I just saw that
that's
online,
another
like 2
thing with
days ago.
journalism. Is you have to stay up on the trends. You have to know what is really going on. And there are certain things that you might be like, I have no interest in that. Like, my husband isn't going to wear the man romper. Ever. Not on my watch. But it's like, maybe I'm going to write about that. That Pokemon Go thing, of no interest to me. I still wrote about it. Because if people are talking about it and tweeting about it and it's on my social media feed, it's probably on your social media feed too. And that means that it makes for a good story. So I really try to look around, which is another reason I like to come to the high school, because I tell the publications program this is, high school kids are trendsetters. So I know by this summer, everyone else is going to be wearing rompers.
They're getting more popular every day.
And that's another reason I come here, to find out, like, what's the next trends going to be? What am I going to be writing about?
That's a good way to look at it. I guess being like coming into the high school, it's much clearer to see the trends, because being in it, we don't even realize what's happening.
You really don't realize that you're on the cutting edge of things. And I am very much in suburbia if I choose to stay there and not go out. So I try to work from Panera or Starbucks as much as I can, because I love to hear people's conversations. I love to hear what they're talking about. I love to see what people are wearing. Most of everybody's like this. Everybody's really, head down in the phone. And I try to look beyond that. I try to hear what they're talking about. And the high school is just, I admit, I come here to see what you guys are wearing.
Well, that's definitely flattering for us. I can see some of our crew members feel pretty happy after you said that.
And to see what you're talking about. Snapchat, for example, I know most suburban housewives are on Facebook is the thing.
Yes.
They're on Facebook all the time. My 13-year-old and 14-year-old cousins have 10,000 Instagram followers. I don't understand this because I have like 25. But now I find out that Instagram is like yesterday. Now it's all Snapchat. And you have to snap 10 to 500 times a day. So this to me is fascinating, because it took me a few hours to figure out Snapchat. And those are things that I like discovering. It's still fun to me.
So that's a big part of journalism, is discovering new things.
It is.
Keeping on the edge. So you mentioned social media. Do you have any social media platforms where we can find your work? I know you mentioned your website previously.
I am on Twitter and Instagram.
What's your handle? You can plug them. What's your at?
I should know this. My Twitter is KKOHLER.
Okay.
Yes.
What was that?
KKOHLER.
Okay, Kohler. Okay. And is that the same for all your social medias? Are you on Facebook too?
Listen, just put Katie Kohler or Katie Bambi Kohler in Google, and a whole mess of stuff will come up. You'll find out all about me.
Okay, and as we're wrapping up this interview, speaking of personal information, I hear you have a real passion for penguins. Could you tell us more about that?
Oh, boy, you got me. Yes, I do have a passion for penguins. And how this all started, and it is actually, I don't want to say taken on a life of its own, because that would be so vain and really not true. It is taken on a life of its own in my own head. It's my mother, my sainted, wonderful mother, still makes us write Christmas lists to Santa, and she gives them to him, supposedly. And ever since I was 5 years old, I have asked Santa for a penguin. And the first year she gave me a stuffed penguin in a Santa suit, which I still have. And the next year I wrote again a penguin, because it appeared she wasn't getting the hint that I actually wanted a penguin and not a stuffed penguin or, a penguin figurine. I wanted an actual penguin.
A real life penguin.
So as I got older, and she must have thought that I could handle being a penguin mom, she started to call zoos and ask if she could buy a penguin. And anyone that knows my mother, this is not surprising, because she is a mixture of June Cleaver and Beverly Goldberg put together in a ball of wonderfulness. And I call her like 3 times a day, which is like, and she would call the zoos and be like, oh, I'd like to purchase a penguin. And they'd be like, oh, what zoo are you from? And she would be like, oh, and she would like give them her address. And it would be like, you don't live at a zoo, you are a resident, and they'd hang up on her. So I think she's on some kind of penguin watch list now. Anyway, it basically got to the point that I really wanted a penguin.
Yeah.
And it takes a very loving and understanding husband to put it to me in terms of they cannot live in a residential household habitat. It's not like the penguin butler that comes and answers the door. It's really sweet that you want one, but it can't live like that. The heating and cooling bills would just be out of control. So he said that, and it kind of like, I want to say it sunk in, but it really didn't. Because then what would happen is you ask me like, oh, what's a cool thing you get to do? A couple years ago, SeaWorld brought some penguins to the King of Prussia Mall. So of course, I was like, may I please get press credentials for that? So they bring me in to meet the penguin keeper, who's like, yeah, I travel with the penguin. And I'm like, he's a penguin in King of Prussia, is he okay? He's like, penguins don't need to be in cold temperatures.
So it's all a myth.
So I'm like, it's all a myth and everyone's lying to me.
So you could have a penguin.
And I'm like, can I touch the penguin? And he's like, you can't. And I'm like, I'm gonna touch the penguin. And he's like, please don't. So that got kind of awkward, and I tried to keep professionalism.
So did you touch it?
I did not.
Oh, that's
but
unfortunate.
then my mother, of course, comes through
Okay.
clutch again and adopts penguins for me at Camden Aquarium. And what I got to do was I got to go and spend an afternoon with the penguins. We had lunch, and we got to finger paint
With the penguins?
with the penguins.
They painted.
They dip them in paint, and they run across a board.
I mean, that sounds like some beautiful abstract art that would come out of
It
that.
is. It really is.
Do you have the art?
Absolutely.
Is it
And I
hanging?
brought it.
You
I'm totally kidding. No, I didn't.
I was really ready for you to like pull
I
it
was
out.
like, oh my God. If she
Be like,
takes this,
you thought this interview was about journalism? Think
sure
again.
it's not.
Do you write about penguins? Do they come in?
All the time. Because you see, the thing is, there are times in journalism where you see some really messed up things.
Okay.
And of course I have to cover the news.
Yeah.
And I cover the news. But with the weekly column for the Times-Herald, I really do have the opportunity to write about whatever I would like to, within reason. Within reason. No, it's really great. Within reason. And one of the things you say, it feels like you connect with your readers, is sharing the things that are personal. If I just wrote every week about other people, you wouldn't know me. And there are, when you ask me to come in for an interview, I always think, why would anyone want to interview me?
This is a fun time.
Because there are very few things I like. I mean, I obviously love my family and friends, which I'm sure you do too. So you would make an interesting interview subject. I like to nap. I enjoy a good nap. I love the beach. This is sounding like a weird online dating thing. What else?
Penguins.
Penguins, and I like going to the bookstore. So I'm like,
Love going to the
why would I be a good interview subject? But those are things, when I put into a column the things that I deal with, like living in suburbia, I'm like, our house gets sprayed by a skunk twice a week. People relate to that. People relate to these things about how I went to Elmwood Park Zoo as a kid, how I grew up in Norristown as a kid, different types of things, how I make sauce on Sundays, which is a very Italian thing, and I let it sit on the back burner for like 4 hours on low, and I stir it every half hour. Those are things that help people connect. My infatuation with penguins, because that's really what it is, infatuation, obsession, whatever you want to call it, gives people some type of connection to me. And it's authentic. Like, I really did go and spend an afternoon with these penguins. And, you know, I do have the artwork and the video and about 600 pictures to prove it.
Well, it really, I mean, I feel like we all have a personal connection now, because who doesn't love penguins, naps, the beach, the bookstores? They're all good things, and we all really appreciate journalism, because that's what we're here to talk about, you know?
Yes, we're here to talk about journalism.
Is there anything else before we end the interview you would like to say about journalism, penguins, anything?
Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for
Keep doing
coming.
good things at Norristown High School. And when you leave here, do good. Do good for yourself and do good for others.
Okay, and thanks for the interview. And that's it. I'm Cameron Duncan, and we're here with Katie Kohler, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much.